Hello everybody, it is LB 3 Point Man and I am back again with another Bengals video. This week we're going to trade Andy Dalton to every team in the NFC and see how he does on each roster. Once again, we are going to go worst to best record, and this is the start. We're going to start off with the Eagles, where he had a bad record of 2-13-1. Not what you'd expect. The coach was fired, that's why I had to go to that screen to look at his stats, and I have to do this to see his overall stats, and he had around 3,500 yards passing, 370 completions on 497 attempts, 18 to 17 touchdown interception ratio is not good, and a bad 80.6 passing rating. On to the Seahawks, a surprisingly bad record with 4-12, and once again the coach was fired. That's what a common theme with a lot of the bad teams. I have to then go through and find the stats. It's really just a big pain. But anyways, he had actually not a bad season here. 3,700 yards passing on 525 attempts, 23 to 10 touchdown interception ratio, and nearly a 90 passer rating. Next up is the 49ers with a 4-12 record. Let's take a quick look at his stats. He had a really terrible season here with 3,046 yards with 6.7 yards per attempt. I know this was particularly bad. Below 80 passer rating, and a touchdown interception ratio that can only be described as awful, with only 11 passing touchdowns and 12 interceptions with 52 sacks. Up next is the Redskins with a overall record of 5-11. He had 4,700 passing yards, so he passed a lot. He had 27 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, not a bad ratio. A 68% completion percentage, nearly 300 yards a game, and nearly 100 yards per quarterback rating, with an 8.5 yards per attempt. So overall, a pretty good season. Next up is the Cardinals with a 5-11 record. Carson Palmer's current team, as everyone knows. He had 3,700 yards. 7.4 yards per attempt, 92.5 passer rating, 31 to 16 touchdown interception ratio. Overall, not a bad season, although I point you to the 65 sacks, which is just shocking. Up next is the Giants at 5-10-1, slightly better than the Cardinals' 5-11 season. It was the worst in the NFC East. And he had 3,600 passing yards, 500 attempts, 18 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, a 61% completion percentage, 86.3 yards per passer rating, and a 7.2 yards per attempt with 59 sacks, which is once again terrible. That's what you notice with a lot of these bad teams, bad offensive lines. 5-10-1 record with the Rams, who we are currently on. 3,300 passing yards on 269 attempts for 7.4 yards per attempt. 17-14 touchdown interception ratio, not what I would call good. And a overall quarterback rating of 84, along with 45 sacks. Not a great season. We're on to the Bears, who had a not great record at 6-9-1. Andy Dalton actually did not have a terrible season with the Bears, with a nearly 400 yards passing, on 321 completions and 500 attempts. A 26-17 touchdown interception ratio is not great, but a 90 overall quarterback rating is decent, and 7.8 yards per attempt is pretty good. With the Saints, he went 7-9. Not a bad season at all. I mean it was, but it's average season. He had 4,100 yards, 351 completions, 561 attempts, a 22 to 17 touchdown reception ratio, which I would say is bad, very bad, and a 85.3 passer rating. Overall, not a great season for him. Not a ton of sacks. The Saints have a good offensive line. Up next, we have the Packers, who went 8-8, and the coach ended up getting fired from that, which I think is a little unfair, but Packers expect excellence, I guess. I don't know what to say about that. That's just how it is. So overall, Andy Dalton had probably his best season with the Packers. Nearly 500,000 yards passing on 408 attempts, 8 yards per attempt, 100 passer rating, 67% completion percentage, 35 to 15 touchdown interception ratio. It was a great season. Now we're on to the Lions. With the Lions, Andy Dalton had 4,500 passing yards, which is pretty good, and on 361 completions and 547 attempts. So 105.3 is his highest yet. 8.3 yards per attempt is also very high. 35-10 touchdown interception ratio is great, and he was sacked 53 times, but I'm surprised they didn't make the playoffs with that great of a season for Andy Dalton, and the same with the Packers. Now in the Vikings, who went 8-8, and his season's a little bit different. It's not nearly as good with the Vikings as it was with the Lions and Packers. He had 3,400 passing yards, a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, below 60% completion percentage, which is not good, and an 88.6 passer rating, which is also just not very good. We're on to the Falcons, who also went 8-8. A lot of teams went 8-8. I think like 5 or 6 teams went 8-8. He had 4,000 passing yards on 496 attempts, which is pretty good. 27.6 touchdown interception ratio, very good. 63% completion percentage, and 102 passer rating is not bad at all. It was a decent season with the Falcons. Now we're on to the Panthers, the reigning Super Bowl. They lost Super Bowl in 2015, went 8-8 this season. 3,000 yards for Andy Dalton, 24-8 touchdown interception ratio, which is not bad. 65% completion percentage is pretty good. 97.2 passer rating and 7.2 yards per attempt. Overall, he did better than Cam Newton did this past season, coming off of that Super Bowl loss. Next up, we have the Buccaneers with a 8-8 record. Once again, as I said, we had a lot of those. Andy Dalton had 3,200 yards on 486 attempts for 6.7 yards per attempt, which is bad. Flat out bad. 29-5 touchdown interception ratio is good. 63% completion percentage is good. But his yards per attempt was shockingly bad, and I don't know why. He also had a lot of sacks that season. Now on to the only team that made the playoffs, the Dallas Cowboys at 12-4. He had almost 5,000 passing yards. This is easily his best season. 558, 396, 36-10 interception ratio, touchdown interception ratio, 70% completion percentage, and 111 passer rating.